Welcome to the channel and welcome to another video. Today we're making the dough for a Napolitano style pizza. The ingredients are very simple. All we're going to be using is some special flours called Tipo 00, made specifically for this kind of thing, Italian pastries or baked dishes, and more specifically our Italian style pizza. We have half a teaspoon of dry yeast, and we also have 2 tablespoons of salt. So those are our ingredients for making pizza dough. It's very simple, not very hard at all. And our last ingredient is water. It's 600 milliliters of lukewarm room temperature water, which we're gonna use for making our dough. All right, so the first step is to add your salt. So let's just add our 2 tablespoons of salt into the water here. Nice, okay. All right, once we've added our salt to our lukewarm water, we're gonna wanna mix it up. So we're just gonna dissolve the water in here. It takes about a second. I'm just mixing up the water. Next step is typically to add your yeast, but we don't want to contaminate our yeast with the salt. So what we're going to do is we're going to dilute the salty water with a little bit of flour. We're working with 1 kilo of flour here. So this whole recipe is for 1 kilo of flour. Again, that's 1 kilo of flour, 2 tablespoons of salt, half a teaspoon of dry yeast. And if you're using fresh yeast, I believe it's like 2 teaspoons or something like that. Look it up, it's easy to find. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use about 10% of our kilo of flour to dilute this water before we get to the adding of the yeast, okay? 10% of flour, and we're mixing as we go along here. And we're gonna be doing everything with our left hand for the first part of this recipe. So the consistency we're going for is like a pancake batter, sort of crepe mix kind of consistency before we add our yeast. I'll show you what that looks like in a second once I have this all dissolved. Just keep adding slowly. You don't want to add too much in the beginning, just 10%. You have enough flour in there right now. And we're just gonna mix that up. It takes a little while. All right, so we're getting the consistency that we're looking for here, which is that kind of pancakey, a little bit lighter than a pancakey syrup mix consistency that you want to have when you work on your dough. And just try to keep your bowl clean. So here we go. The next step is to add our yeast and incorporate that into our mixture. We have our half teaspoon of yeast, dry yeast here, dry active yeast. And we're just going to put that in there. So here we're just mixing in our yeast until it's fully dissolved. And make sure there's no like leftover bits. They'll clump up. Sometimes it'll clump up like that, so you'll see it in here, the little dark spots. So just go in and make sure those are all taken care of and dissolved properly, because you really don't want any clumps of yeast in your mixture. And you'll see that the texture of the mixture immediately changes once you add the yeast. It's really cool. It gets like a little like milkier. Yeah, there's a lot of little clumps in there. Just trying to grab them, make sure they're fully dissolved. And take your time with this. You know, spending an extra 5-10 minutes making your dough makes a huge difference when you're making your actual pizza and getting that perfect crust out the oven. Oh, there's nothing better than that. Fluffy, slightly chewy, delicious crust that you're looking for. I'm just mixing here. I'm gonna use it up a little bit here. Go fishing for yeast. See a couple ones left in there. Make sure they're all dissolved. So we're getting to the consistency that we want here. We have the yeast incorporated. I'm just going over to make sure that there's no leftover yeast clumps in my mixture. Just want to be really sure that there's no big clumps of yeast, okay? Kind of important. And once you've done that, we can move on to the next step. Again, I want to remind you, I'm using one hand for mixing this whole time and the other hand for other stuff. I'm not going to use 2 hands until a lot later. The way we're going to incorporate our flour is we're just going to mix while we add a bit at a time. So we're just going to be mixing and adding a little bit at a time, keeping the edges of the bowl clean. So we're just trying to keep this as even as possible, as nice and evenly mixed as possible, as much as we can, just to make the beginning process easy. But once it starts to get thick, it's just not gonna be possible for you to keep the mixture even. Let's just try to get through this. And I like to just go around like this, nice and easy. I'm gonna do a quick housekeeping and get all the edges out like that. Try to keep it in the middle here, makes things a lot easier. Trust me, keep going. What's a really good tip is before you make your dough, definitely cut your nails, okay? Because you're gonna get a lot of dough in your nails if you didn't cut them first. So yeah, that's one thing. If your nails are even a little bit long, you're gonna be getting some dough in your nails and it's a pain in the butt, okay? I tell you, do not want that, especially when the dough starts to stiffen up a little bit. Okay, loosen up our dough, flour, get it in there. I like sprinkling it like this. You can just pour it in big globs, like you can just do that. And then mix it in real quick. And I like going slow because it just makes it easier for me. Because if you add a lot at one time and try to mix it in, it's just like big clumps of it, and then you have to get the clumps out and you're spending like a long time trying to do that. Or if you just take your time and just incorporate it slowly like this, you know, try to get it all the evenly distributed and then evenly incorporated, save yourself a lot of annoying time trying to get it out. Here we go. So starting to form, you can see that definitely picking up texture here. So here we go. We're just gonna add Last little bits of dough here, flour. So one tip is when you're mixing your dough, you kind of want to try to avoid putting your fingers in it too much and just kind of loop it over like that, because it's just once it starts sticking in between your fingers, it just gets really sticky. You're gonna have to get some in your fingers, but you know, I try to keep my fingers as clean as possible. Just scraping it off the edges, absorbing it off the edges here, and then get some flour on your hands, mixing like that. So there we go, almost done incorporating our flour. So we're just gonna put some on my fingers, my hand, all the dough off. Okay, and once our dough starts to form, we can finish mixing it on the table. I like to keep, once I'm getting close to the end, I like to keep about 10% of the flour left in the bag, because I'm gonna incorporate that on my table. Once I get on my table, I'm gonna get the dough out the bowl and I'm gonna put it on the table and finish mixing it on the table. And you also want a little bit of flour to work with once you're keeping your hands, once you're making dough balls and stuff like that. You're gonna need a little bit of flour to sort of work with the dough so it doesn't stick to everything. So we're almost done incorporating here, folding it over, a lot of folding. So once your dough is starting to get to that finishing point, about this consistency, what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna continuously, you see that there's this flour at the bottom that's not really absorbing, so you're just gonna keep flipping the dough over. We're nearly done. I have about 10-15% of the flour left, and how I'm gonna mix this is I'm just gonna push in and fold. Push in with my palm, fold it over, push in with my palm, fold it over. I'm gonna try to incorporate the rest of the flour with the dough, just like that. Just like that. It's a good workout, yeah, it's not bad. If you like to kind of work for your pizza so you don't feel guilty about it, it's a good way to do it. You burn some calories and then you eat them back. You incorporate the calories into the pizza and then you eat them. And keep going like that, boom. So our dough is actually quite well formed here. So we're getting ready to take this out of the bowl because it's almost ready to turn onto the bench, as they say. The bench, aka table. Oh yeah, so it's almost there, really almost there. Just a couple sticky parts, but you'll see once we're done with this, we can then take our almost completely formed dough ball and turn it onto it. I'm gonna just quickly scrape off all this extra little bits here on the sides. Make sure you clean your table really well prior to this. So I'm gonna leave a little tiny bit in there. I'm just gonna take this guy here and we're gonna incorporate the rest of the dough, just like that. Taking up that flour off the, and we're just pushing, and then there's two ways you can do it. You can keep pushing over. So basically you're pushing the dough over from that side, which pushes it out that way. And then you basically push it over the other side. So you're going like that, and then like that. Again, you're pushing over kind of like that. Once you've pushed it over like that, you're pushing it over like that. It's like a continuous loop of folding. The other way you could do it is you just take it, you fold it over like this, basically. You push it, let's get this flour. The other way you could do it, work your dough, is you kind of start pushing with your palms, and once it comes out like that, turn it over like this into that shape, and then you push it in like this with your palms. You can go like fold it once more, and then just fold it over like that. Push it, once it starts to form like that, I like to flip it to get the other side to go like that. Turn it over, and you mostly want to be pushing the dough, not pulling or stretching it. Much better. Go like that, but I'm just gonna go back to this way of just kind of folding it over like this. And we're almost done picking up our flour off the table here. So what you want to start forming this into a ball is just, the same old thing you've been doing, just pushing it out into this longer piece. Start to get, as you form your dough, and you flip it over, and you're basically like pushing it over itself. See that skin start to form, pushing it, pushing it, pushing it, pushing it, get into a cylinder. Start to see that it's getting smooth on the outside here. You kind of roll in the dough as you're mixing it, pull it over, and just start pushing it out again. So you start pushing it over, kind of form into a ball. You're just kind of pulling out the outside of the skin and just keep continuously pushing it over here. Quite well mixed. So once your dough is getting ready, you're gonna think it's done, but it's not. It's not done because you need to keep massaging the dough till it gets to the right consistency. You'll see when you push it, it kind of comes out like that, but it's not quite where I want it yet. It's really the temperature on the inside that you want to be like, I think it's 78 or 72 degrees. I don't really measure mine. Feel it out like that. And once I finish mixing it, take it like that. Oh yeah, it's getting there. The more you massage it, you'll notice that the texture continues to change. All right, here we go. So now we're getting there. You can definitely see that this is changing. The color is changing, the consistency is changing. You see that? That's totally different than how it was like 2 seconds ago. Continuously push the dough. The way you wanna do the dough is you put it like this, So the way you form your dough when you're mixing it, get this long piece, pull it over like this, and then you push it in like that, and you keep pulling back. And that's how you make your dough ball. Then you push it out, boom, 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 boom. All right, so my dough is getting to the consistency that I want it to be at here. All right, I'm just gonna do a couple more folds. So now I'm getting ready to finalize my dough ball. Take this guy, fold it over like that, and pull. As I'm pulling, I'm kind of pulling back in a circular motion and pushing down, and trying to pull this dough on the outside and then pushing it in. So I keep getting the outer layers in, okay? And once I want to start creating my dough ball, I can just start doing like that. All right, guys, now that we have formed our excellent, soft, delicious looking dough ball, the next step is to put it in our bowl and let it sit for 2 hours. Now, you can optionally add some virgin olive oil, extra virgin olive oil on top, any oil really, but use extra virgin olive oil on top to prevent it from drying out on the outside. Or you can just cover it in plastic, which most people do is just cover it in plastic. I'm gonna do both. Or you could also use a damp towel, like a damp cooking towel or any kind of washcloths that you want to use, but the goal is to prevent it from drying out on the outside. Me, I'm just going to put a little bit of olive oil. I think maybe you might even add some flavor, I don't know, but just a little bit of olive oil like that. And we're just adding our olive oil to the outside of our dough ball here. Make sure it's spread out nicely. Cool. And I'm even going to put a little bit on the bottom that will help me extract my dough ball. Adding my plastic wrap to the dough ball. Dough ball. Sounds like a nickname somebody would give me. You look like a dough ball. Am I right? Just keeping it covered. A main goal here, prevent this from drying. Now you just let it sit pretty much anywhere. It's room temperature. So after we wait about 2 hours and it's risen, we're gonna take our dough and form it into smaller balls, like for pizza. 1 kilo usually makes about 5, Napolitano style pizzas, which is like that big. And we're gonna let those smaller dough balls rise for me, it's gonna be for about a day and a half. So today is Thursday, it's 3:34, and I'm gonna cook my pizza on Saturday. So the longer you let it rise, the fluffier and more, light and airy the crust is gonna be. So that's what I'm going for. But you do wanna, if you're gonna let it rise for long periods of time, you're gonna wanna put it in like a refrigeration or something, like around 65, 64 degrees. So it doesn't go bad or anything. You don't want it in a really hot environment. And if you don't wanna let it sit for that long, at least let it rise for like 12 hours, or even better is 24 hours is usually optimal. So that's how you're gonna get the best dough. All right guys, it's been about 20 hours since I started letting my dough rise. You're only supposed to really let it go for 2 hours, but I was busy and it doesn't really matter. I let it go for 24 hours, 20 hours. The next step in the process after your dough has risen to turn it into dough balls. I'm going to take some flour here. Okay. So for that, we're just gonna take the dough out. Pull out this big, look how big it got from where we were earlier. It smells great. I'm just gonna take our dough and kind of strain it out just a bit. Definitely has changed in texture. And to make the dough balls, I am just gonna make it into 5 equal pieces. I find that 5 is about how much you get out of 1 kilo. So I'm just gonna make them into rough balls. So first I'm just gonna do that to make sure they're about equally sized or roughly equal. So once you've figured that you've got roughly equally sized balls, this one's a bit smaller. So you just wanna push it out, and then same as last time, just kind of take your dough. You can just go like this, or there's a couple of different ways you can do it. That's one way. If you do that, crimping at the bottom, it ends up going like that. So just keep going until you think the inside is smooth and even, and boom, there's a dough ball. You take that, throw it in there. Other way you can do it, take your dough square, cut it a certain way, kind of flatten it like that, flatten it like that, twisting it up there, get enough dough ball, boom, another dough ball. Another way you could do it, if you actually had like taken a big long piece of it, you can just pop off the end. We're just making dough balls here. Cool. Now once you have your dough balls created, you can also, again, put some olive oil on top. Step of making your dough is to simply take out some plastic wrap, apply it to your container. You want to make sure this is airtight, and that will prevent it from drying out. I prefer it if I find a dish that allows me to wrap it and not have the wrap touch the dough balls. I just feel like sometimes the dough doesn't rise as much as it can because it's touching the top. That's just how I feel. Anyways, there we go. Let that go for 24 hours and you can make the pizza dough. And in the other video you can watch, probably over here somewhere, you can see how I turn this dough into an actual crust that you make pizza out of and make the pizza out of. Stay tuned and make sure you watch my other videos and like and subscribe. I like great stuff.